Welcome back. Thanks for those joining us. Some first time, some were with us for season one. We had a really fun time with that, so we brought it on back. This time a little different. We are going to be chatting with a bunch of amazing muskie fly fishing guides, intentionally scheduled during muskie prime time, so we can get a little, real-time action. For those of you guys that are new, we do this Zoom webinar style. Please feel free to interact as we're going. You got a chat button down below on your left. Some people are already using that. Make sure if you want to chat, you click all panelists and attendees. That way you can banter with everybody else. Jen will be the chat police. If you do have questions that you want us to hit on, we're going to try and get them all. Submit them to that Q&A button, separate button on the bottom screen. That way we can track them. And we'll keep it tight and see if Steve can get through them all. We're gonna run for about an hour, try and keep that on schedule. And that's really about it. So without further ado, our first official guest of season 2, coming from Eau Claire, Mr. Steve Wisner. What's up, man? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing really, really well. Hopefully everybody else is doing well. We're rolling through so far the beginning of a pretty good August, at least muskie wise. So that's pretty exciting.
That's what it looks like. We're going to talk about that too. It looks like you're off to a good start. Well, I appreciate you joining us, dude. I know we got a bunch of questions, a bunch of funny stories and serious topics we want to get to, but just kick us off. How did the journey back to the Midwest, how did you get tangled up in this muskie rodeo? What was the allure? Give me the rundown.
Yeah. So I grew up here in Wisconsin. I mean, when I was, young, and briefly in Minnesota, sort of through my high school years, but just right across the border, in the Twin Cities. But I grew up trout fishing, and my dad was a really avid fly angler for trout, and he was a professor, so he had an opportunity to sort of, with summers off, to head out west. And one day he came home and he said, "Hey, we're moving to Idaho. We're going to live on the Henry's Fork, and for the summer." And so we started. I guess I was probably 14 years old.
Yeah, kicking and screaming, like that sounds like.
Yeah. So we started we lived right there, just walking distance to the railroad ranch, kind of the most famous section of the Henry's Fork. And so I just spent my summers there, and for a while I just fished every single day. I mean, there wasn't really a whole lot of other people like sort of my age there, so the summer times were just fishing. And then I started working for a guy named Mike Lawson at Henry's Fork Anglers, which at that time was really kind of one of the most big deal sort of fly shops, I think, in the country. So it was kind of cool to be a part of. And I worked there until I was 18. I worked in the shop until I was 18. And then when I turned 18, I started guiding, even though I looked like I was probably 16 at that time. I was like a dorky looking kid with braces.
I paid for
but that was guiding for me. And then, it was all trout. I mean, trout, and in a way, I was like the Midwest. That was, the trout fishing was, we thought at the time better out west. That's even arguable in some ways now. But, so that I just ended up out west, and eventually I came back here to go to graduate school. And in the time when I came back, my dad was really the guy that had sort of discovered smallmouth bass and had, put his drift boat in here and started fishing for smallmouth bass. And this was actually quite a few years ago. And for a long time, somebody could probably argue about it, but we were the only people I knew in this part of Wisconsin with a drift boat at that point. I mean, and I'm sure there were other people that we just didn't cross paths with.
There's a lot of them if there were.
But that was kind of it. We were fishing, and then it was smallmouth. And then honestly, what starts happening, is that all of a sudden, one day you catch a muskie, and it's like, well, wow, these things eat flies. And then I had the real, sort of pleasure of getting to fish with Bill Scherer a long time ago, actually. And really at that time, when he was, the OG of muskie guides for fly fishing. I mean, I didn't know. I mean, there may have been other people doing it, but I didn't know who they were. and we went out with him, and boom, got a muskie right away. And it was like, you know, and really realized like, oh, this is, you know, a thing that can happen. And so it just sort of grew. And at a certain point I decided, you know, maybe other people would want to do this, you know. I mean, it was sort of, you know, so I started guiding. I'm a high school English teacher, and so I have summers off. So so summers, and then really though now my busiest time of the year is fall, and so I'm just, you know, I work every Saturday, Sunday guiding, and you know, and in some ways kind of wish I could be work, you know, guiding those other days in October, you know, weekdays as well. But anyway, that's the story. That's kind of where it came from. And just this realization, I kind of wrote an article for the Drake magazine about the fact that, you know, this part of the Midwest, the fishing is awesome. Like, I mean, it's not, you know, I would not trade fishing here to go back out west for anything. You know, I mean, it's better and sort of more exciting, more variety, more interesting. Anyway, yeah, that's the story.
How do you? I like that topic just for a minute though. That's a unique story. How and unique for many reasons. There's a lot of, especially in muskie, a lot of guys that come and girls that come into this sport through gear fishing, right? Incredibly popular in muskie, but you kind of came the old-fashioned way, like out west. Yeah. Fly fishing only, and then kind of found it here in the Midwest, which is cool. How do they compare though? Like the scenes?
Oh, yeah. So it's really interesting. Yeah, and that's a great question, because the Henry's Fork where I was fishing, I mean the railroad ranch section, the Harriman State Park section of the Henry's Fork, I think, and I mean I think there's a pretty strong consensus about this, probably the toughest trout angling in the entire United States. I mean, these are fish that get fished to every day with dry flies. You can only sight fish in them. You're not going to ever just drum one up with a nymph. And, you know, really a good day on the railroad ranch is 1 or 2 fish. And so, you know, that kind of, you know, I mean, as opposed to going and floating to Madison, where back in the days, you know, you could have 100 fish days, you know, I mean, so I kind of grew up with an understanding of, you know, the sort of plan that it was cooler to fish where things were hard, and, you know, and be able to catch maybe one fish was a bigger deal than just piling them up. And so that I think was a perfect preparation to become a muskie. Was, you know, same kind of game. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Where do you think, like, looking at it now, being back, you know, I mean, you were out west during kind of the first big boom of fly fishing, post comes through it, and now you're kind of in the Midwest at the center of kind of the Midwest boom.
Oh yeah, no question about it. I mean, when I was there in the 80s, so that was, you know, people always think that the boom happened like after the river runs through it, but that's really not true. I mean, those rivers out there where people were all over them. If you read in those days something like Fly Fisherman magazine, you know, they were name checking those rivers big time, and people were flooding out there. And so, you know, and in a way you kind of got to see this thing, you know, arguably get loved to death a little bit, you know, some of those rivers. And you know, I mean, that's always one of my concerns as a guide, you know, is, I mean, we've got this really cool thing, really special thing here, and, you know, what's the right number of people, you know, I mean, you know, so, I mean, I do my best to try to keep certain things, you know, play fairly close to the vest with certain rivers and certain fisheries, but, you know, but yeah, it's really, but on the other hand, man, I mean, this is where the cool fishing's going on. Let's face it. I mean, this is, you know, muskies, smallmouth. I mean, the river I'm on, how many fish, and trout. I mean, you know, I mean, and then all these other species we can fish for. I mean, we're out behind I live right on the river here, and I mean, we're on the lower Chippewa River, and we can fish for, I mean, moon eyes and carp and suckers and just anything that swims. So it's exciting stuff, you know, walleyes.
Yep. Yep.
I got a big catfish this year on a fly, which if you've never done is really awesome.
They like, are you specifically targeting them? Because we get a few down here on the lower that just destroy musky flies, like out of the blue once in a while.
I haven't really figured out how to target these cats the way, it just came up and sipped in a tequila smallmouth fly that I was dead drifting, just like a trout, just came up and just sipped it in. And then it was like a 12-pound.
Yeah, that probably gave the 8-weight a fun little.
Oh yeah, I know. You can't move those things. They're like amazing. So anyway, yeah, it's just an exciting fishery to be in.
Yeah. You touched on a couple things I want to circle back to, and we're already getting some good questions. We will get to them. So a kind of two-parter, but like you mentioned it, and I think this probably goes for a lot of, I sense it at least, a lot of Midwest guides, less so than out West, because out West, it's so much first-time fishermen, tourists. I want to fish the snake in Grand Teton National Park, and I'm never going to come back. So the whole spot burning, hot spotting dilemma is different here. How do you manage that as a guide? Like, do you have rules of thumb? Like, if people, there's people out there, nice people, who they just want to go with you to learn spots. Is that like where do
that's what do you do? I mean, I just try to be the best guide I can be, and I can't really control necessarily what and where people go. I just try to give people the best day I can, and and honestly, I have a number of pretty special rivers over here. Rivers I know you're aware of that probably couldn't handle a whole lot of people fishing in. You wouldn't want to follow multiple boats down, especially for muskies. Maybe less of a problem for smallmouth, maybe.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just have found that for the most part, they're still, I'm not running into tons of people on them. And so some of those rivers, you really have to kind of know, like water levels. And there's a lot of rivers that we have, especially the smaller rivers where maybe that kind of pressure would be bad, that you just really can't fish a large part of the year because the water levels are just either too low or too high.
Yep.
And if you don't really know the range on the gauge and kind of be able to predict it, you could go to put a boat in and be really disappointed.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
I think it's it's an issue, but it's
I think it's solvable. I think it's because I think we see it a little bit here in Madison because we have a world-class muskie fishery. It's just it might not seem that way to some people, but we have world record on the fly class fish swimming in multiple lakes. But they get absolutely beat up. By everyone from Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, you name it, every day of the week. And yet they still produce. And I think I see it as like an opportunity, especially in the fly world, I always encourage people to get out on a lake. I love floating rivers. I know you love a river, but the lake, we have a lot of lakes, we have a lot of rivers. And I think there's a code of, the known knowns versus kind of the unknown spots that we want.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, I love rivers just because I live on one, and that's kind of more what I grew up and feel comfortable on. I'm always excited if somebody will take me out on a lake that really knows, that knows what they're, someone who knows what they're doing. That to me is kind of cool, because then I'm really out of my element, and so it's kind of exciting to go out and fish a lake with somebody that really is good at it. I'm not a lake angler. I really don't even have the equipment to do it, so.
Yeah, I hear you. So I did get one while we're kind of on the guide trip topic, if you will. Someone submitted this earlier in the week. They wanted to hear your advice for someone who books a muskie trip that's never fly fished before.
Well, and this is going to be a tough one. So the question is, if they book a muskie trip and they've never fly fished before.
Underline on muskie trip. Yeah.
I'll give you sort of this answer will be like sort of there are two ways to do this answer. The simplest answer to that is just don't. Don't do that. If you've never fly fished before, muskies is not the place to start.
Yeah.
It really isn't. Your growth as a fly angler is going to go a lot better if you sort of work your way to this, just purely because it's hard. It's a hard day. It's frustrating for people who are really skilled. And so, early in your fly fishing career, it's probably the most fun to just catch fish. And there are other species that are going to do that for you. However, if you really you're a musky gear angler and you're really not interested and, you just want to really, you see people catch them on flies and you want to get into that, then the next piece of information, best thing would be really, you got to learn to cast. And there is nothing, we could talk all day long about flies and lines and blah, blah, blah. But if you can't cast, you're going to really struggle, and fly casting is hard and it's going to take some amount of time. And there are ways that you can make it easier. You can definitely, rather than really perfect tight loop casting, water load, I do it myself and it works great. It's a way in the door. I know.
I'm fucking with you.
I don't know where or how that happened. Like one time I was out this weekend and I was like,
You knew it was going to come up. You knew it was going to come up.
And it's not even, to me, it's a sort of a silly conversation, but it's, but if you were a person that really was sort of new to it, it's a way in the door. The problem with it, as the way in the door is, it's not going to work if you switch from musky angling to any other kind of fly angling. You're not going to be able to water load a size 18 dry fly. So if you ever want to do that kind of stuff, that you sort of you're going to feel like you know how to use a fly rod and you don't, which is sort of one of those situations. But man, getting a rod and going out in the, if you got access to a yard or a gymnasium or somewhere where you can catch, it's fun to cast fly rods. It's fun to practice, and it's like I said, I'd literally take them with me in the middle of, like, this winter I was going to Mexico on a saltwater trip, and I brought my fly rod into work every single day, and then I'd go into the gym during my lunchtime and just make casts, and it just was enjoyable. It felt good, and it certainly didn't hurt to to have that under my belt when I showed up and the wind was blowing 50 miles an hour in Mexico. And,
I was going to ask.
That's my best advice, but really, my biggest advice would be, man, there is a path that most people take, which is, start with bluegills and brook trout and, kind of work your way up to musky fishing. But,
it's a similar path in gear fishing too. It's just kind of interesting how they do kind of go this way and then they get, so we see it a lot. You see it a lot. Gear, musky fools that are just gear fishermen who, I want to try that. And I think that crossover, I've seen it work, but to your point, you gotta kind of reinvent your whole thing, because it's not about, power casting a bait caster. Yeah, that makes sense. How was that trip to Mexico, by the way? And I want to hear, like... Is
that why you're so tan?
I think it might have been
tan because I sit around in boats all day long. It's like, that's I'm gonna probably end up having to have like my part of my face removed at some point, so I'm not real good at
we're gonna do a gear review at the end, and we'll ask you what like suntan oil you use and what your face cream regimen is and all that stuff. Don't worry.
It's called serum.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Just like really quickly, we get to ask this a lot, and I don't do a ton of saltwater fishing, but guys that saltwater fish, fly fish, and are interested in musky fishing, and they kind of have the like, oh, I can cast far, I fish for tarpon, I know what this is about.
Yeah.
Like, where are the similarities? Where are the differences?
The similarity is like, so even, unless you're on just a bonefish trip where you're like really getting into them and they're going to pile up a bunch of fish, but if you're fishing for tarpon or permit or something like that, you're looking for a fish, so that's going to be real similar. I mean, I'm new to the saltwater game, so I'm, in some ways I'm sort of talking out my butt right now. But what I could say that I discovered was, I mean, a big difference is, sight fishing versus blind casting. And sight fishing, when if you don't have a fish to fish to, you can sort of grab a beer and, and
pee and cast at the same time.
Look at the birds fly by and watch dolphins swim, and I mean all that kind of cool stuff. Whereas let's face it, with musky fishing, it's just you gotta keep your head in the game. Guaranteed that fish eats when you're looking at an eagle every time, and so that is like sort of I think is a difference for saltwater anglers is like, no, we're gonna cast all day long.
And like, even if you're not casting, maybe keep the fly in the water or do a fish bait. Like, it's just like, you never really know.
Right.
We
had a fish, my son had a fish crush his fly, 2 days ago, that while we were rowing across, we were just cutting across the river and he was just letting it hang, just kind of trolling off the bow and got to eat from a really big fish, and he was just sitting there and, he generally has a pretty good game, but it just caught him by surprise and like that, and no fish. But yeah, I think so I think for saltwater guys, I mean, to whoever they are, I mean, it's the same in that, think permit fishing or something like that, but it's just different in that, I mean, the hardest part about musky fishing is you're going to throw your flies into great looking water, into spots where there are fish, and a lot of casts aren't going to get eaten. You're not going to get foul. You're not going to get any love at all. And it'll wear you down as the day goes on. I mean, that's the hardest part. I mean,
and it'll wear you down, and then it is when it usually happens, when you're worn down. Right.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest part of my job is being a cheerleader. No question about it. It's being like a motivational speaker from the middle of the boat and just constantly trying to tell people, look, really this is a thing that can happen. It will happen if we keep going, but it's hard. I mean, it's hard on days if they're not moving a lot of fish, and I mean, it's.
Do you ever like? I always wondered this. Do you ever like get in a position where you just see the client kind of getting beat down and worn out, and maybe you just throw in a fake like, oh, follow. Like,
I've never done that. That's actually, no, I'm not really that crafty. But yeah, I haven't done it, but, but I think, I mean, if I might, and I noticed looking at some of the people who are here in the list, including some people who I've guided, who can tell you that I spend a lot of the time saying things like, keep saying about this is a high percentage spot. This is a high percentage spot. This spot's got, and those kind of things that sometimes people look at me and be like, you've said that how many times today? And, and I even say it a lot. I'll be like, look, I know I've said this 50 times already, but, but one of these spots is gonna, I mean, a fish will show up, and usually they do.
Yeah.
I mean, by far, way, way, way more days than not. I mean, honestly, we put fish in the boat more days than we don't put fish in the boat. That's really the truth. And, if you stay with it, they show up, and sometimes, sometimes people miss hook sets and, or they just shake their head with barbless hook and they get off, I mean, those are things that just happen. But anyway, that's just part of it. It's just trying to stay with it.
I hear you. And that's what we preach as well. And that's kind of the, it's a little bit of the fool and musky fool. You got to be a little crazy to just beat your head over and over. But I love Grant Myers' name, by the way. Did you see how he registered for this webinar?
No, I didn't.
Grant Myers, Stephen Wisner Fan Club, El Presidente. Is that a campaign? Is that like you're going against Kanye in 2024, Steve Wisner?
That's really kind of him to say that. I do like that I protected him from his wife I thought his wife was going to try to throw me overboard. So I didn't know which one of us she was going to throw out of the boat when last we fished together. But yeah.
What is high percentage? Aaron asks. Do you have a number there?
No, yeah, that's, what, those are spots that will produce multiple fish over the course of a season. I mean, what percentage, I don't know. but you will really find that there are certain spots. I mean, I can think of certain rivers where last year, I mean, I had one stretch of river last year during the fall where we boated fish every single time we fished there. And quite honestly, they mostly came out of the same 3 spots. I mean, we fished all day, but these 3 spots were where, for whatever reason, and they weren't the same fish, so, right. I mean, I can tell you from spots on the river that I fish near my house, there are certain spots where over the years that I've lived here, we've caught, 25, 30 fish, and they're never the same fish. So what, that tells you that, I mean, there's something, those spots have everything. They have forage, they have cover, they have everything that a muskie needs. And you just sort of, if you float these rivers again and again and again, those spots start to show themselves, you start to really know.
And it's
we still get surprise. I still get surprise fish.
Yep.
But honestly, most 8 out of 10 fish that I see coming in my boat now are coming out of spots where I kind of would expect one to come out of those spots. That's the best way to put it.
Yep. So we got a lot of questions that I do want to get through, but again, before we hit on some of those, just kind of give us a little bit of like, where's your season at? When do you where you were in August, right? We just started August. How do you start to approach the next 3 months in muskie country?
Yeah.
So the guy, Stephen, maybe more like, what are you thinking about in terms of fishing tactics and
yeah, that's maybe a lot more interesting kind of question. I mean, because as a guide, I'm coming out of smallmouth. I mean, smallmouth fishing has been kind of my game for guiding. So here's what this is what we're seeing right now. I mean, I can tell people like flat out, where are the muskies right now? I mean, the fish that we've been seeing have been, almost regularly at the bottom of fast water stretches, like at the bottom of rapids, and especially if they have some kind of a relatively deep run at the bottom. So not every set of rapids has that. Sometimes it just stays shallow off the bottom, and they're not afraid of being in fast water right now. Like, so, you will see fish hanging in fast water. I mean, especially if you don't know what there is down on the bottom, it doesn't take much cover at all for a fish to, it doesn't take a very big rock on the bottom for them to have a total current break if they sit there. But they're happy to be in fast water. I mean, it's really quite simple. Oxygenated water means that there are a lot of nymphs and crustaceans, which means there's a lot of suckers, which means there's a lot of muskies. I mean, it's a really simple kind of formula. They maybe don't want to sit up in the real shallow stuff, so they just hang in that pool in the bottom and pick stuff off. And that's where we're finding them.
Right? They're eating a lot, so they can sit in that water and work a little.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Right now it's the salad days. They can eat whenever they want. I mean, that's one thing I always say about muskies. People just need to understand they can eat whenever they want. They're not a fish that has to worry about where its next meal is coming from. They just don't. They will go where the food is, and whenever they feel like eating, they're going to eat. That a muskie, I don't think, wakes up in the morning and goes like, God, I hope I can catch something today. I mean, in most of these rivers, it's just like, when I'm hungry, I'll just like order in a pizza. I'll just go out and slam something. So they just put themselves in a spot where there's, plenty of that. Our water temps, by the way, right now are like in the 60s. We're in like, that's that rain, and we've had some cold nights. So you do not have to worry if you're fishing rivers up here about, where fish are going to be. So basically, as the season goes on, what'll start to happen as, first of all, metabolisms get increased, right? So fish start wanting to eat more and more, so you'll start seeing, you'll start moving more fish as we move along. And then the fish will start to change where they're hanging, and they'll start to move more towards slow, deep water. With that being relative to whatever.
Yeah, the classic fall river spots though, right?
Yeah. And then slowly until we really, and as the season goes, you'll see that kind of move, and you'll still I mean, it's in flux. It's not, so on any given day, you know, like in September and early October, yeah, you know, they're kind of,
Or
some are moved, some
yeah.
are still here. You got to kind of fish all that stuff.
Yep.
And then by the time you get to late October and November, you start getting into what I just call wintering holes. I mean, fish, at least on the rivers here, move into, and we kind of start to know that's where years of fishing come in handy. Because if you start to know where those holes are, you know, and we're still, every now and again, you still find some new spot, and they're not always as obvious as you think they would be necessarily, but you start to find them, and then it starts to be like, oh, you know, we can hit these spots regularly in late October, November, and start seeing fish. And that's when you change your tactics to low, slow, deep, big flies for me. I mean, I don't fish this jazz until late. You know, like that's just not stuff that I throw all the time. In fact, you know, we've been catching fish, catching muskies, you know, pretty solidly on this fly right now. And you know, big fish too. It's not, it's not just dams.
Yeah, that was really helpful. And I think you guys keep us honest here, but I think we hit on like at least a couple on my list and a couple that I saw in there. So that was sweet. I'm glad you kind of were able to walk us through that, because that's what's like, I love fishing for them, and I know a lot of people do all year long, but what gets me so jacked is just what they go through between now and us. You know, it's when the muskie really gains its name in terms of what it does.
Yeah, and there are without a doubt bigger migrations of fish. Like fish move, especially in these smaller rivers, way more than I think people, like, you know, like I think if you're a lake angler, there's sort of less. I mean, they might move up and down the water column, and, you know, definitely I know as bad of a lake angler as I am, I know, you know, they're following weed lines and what have you. But our fish here, I mean, sometimes they're moving right out of some of these tribs.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're just leaving them and coming out in the fall. And so, you know, if you happen to be in the right spot, you can really catch like a whole lot of fish. All of a sudden you're like, holy crap, where did all these fish come from? You know, you'll have one of those days and it's like, well, because you're actually seeing a bunch of upriver fish that are kind of moving down and finding their deep water spots to hang. And if you happen to catch them mid-move, it can be amazing.
We're not talking like a few miles. We're talking.
No, they really migrate.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and it depends on the river. If they have everything they need, then they don't really need to. But you know, we have some really shallow little tribs that they like to be up in the summer.
Yep, we have it right now because we're
colder water, and they like to hang out in them. And then they got to get out in the winter because a lot of those will just freeze. Like, you know, you know, there isn't going to be a whole lot of non-frozen water in some of those.
Yep. No, you're right. You're right. We got some muskies down here that start to get up and torment some of the trout streams a little bit. Once summer hits, they got to find water. They got to find spring flow. And it can be pretty crazy to see muskie and pike coexisting with brown trout.
Yeah, I'm sure trout are delicious too.
Yeah, it's just like a very easy to eat, you know, not spiny. Yeah. All right, let's before we go back and talk about all the serious, you know, gear stuff, which we like to talk about, we got like several questions about this Steve Wisner delicacy, which some of you may know about. Malort, can you explain to those that are not familiar what goes into this? What is it? What is Malort? How does it get used in your equation?
Oh my God, it's so funny that you ask, because by total chance, I just happen to have a bottle of it sitting right here.
You bring it around with you, God damn it.
It actually is, I'm in my fly tying room and it sort of sits here so I can actually bring it on musky trips. I mean, mostly with my friends. So Malort, if you've never had it, this is the most repulsive. I mean, in a way, I actually kind of like it, but it's this liqueur from Chicago that is really, the best way to describe it is it's like tastes like kerosene with a pencil shaving finish.
I love how you genuinely plug it and you have a smile on your face when you do it, but your first adjective is repulsive.
Well, I mean, most people are not going to be real happy when so we have kind of a little tradition amongst us, you know, and you know, there's kind of a cool crew of guys in Eau Claire that we all fish together and get along, including other guides. I mean, you know, several of whom you're having, you know, like
Yep.
Hunter Dorn and Nick Markowitz, and, you know, just really, you know, good anglers. But somehow we just developed a thing that when you hook you know, if we boat a muskie, then the Malort has to make the rounds, you know, and it's you kind of have to pay a certain
the river toll.
Yeah, it's kind of paying the toll. Yeah, I mean,
and
yeah, you
like,
don't have to worry about sitting around and just like anyone just sitting around drinking Malort. It's not
like your late night liqueur. It sounds like
nobody's just pouring themselves a glass and this stuff's great.
Some people handle it well, and some people, Grant Meyer, don't handle it well. Is that what I? Sorry, buddy. Correct, he says. No, I did have some very serious questions on this topic, though.
Yeah.
Let me check my notes here. Someone asked how much Malort does a muskie consume during spawn, and they followed that up with how much Malort does Steve consume during fall?
Yeah. Hopefully a lot if we have some every time we.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, a good.
Yeah, I don't want to make too much of that. That's just kind of a funny thing, but it became kind of a little tradition with us that we bring that along. And
that's good.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, when I'm guiding, I'm not busting out the Malort, but maybe I should more often.
Well, if you're on the call and you want to book a trip with Steve and you want him to bring the Malort, just give him a heads up. He's got it right next to him. He'll pull it out.
Yeah, we'll put it in there. But you know, yeah, it's just I think, well, I mean, it's all part of, and this is the part that I think that maybe we could touch on a little bit, which is like, you know, to me, and I really mean this, like if I had one thing that I think, so muskies can tell if you're taking this too seriously. Like they know if you know, I mean, you know. But I really seriously believe that like a lot of whatever success I have in this, it has been that really I've always tried to just keep it as fun as I possibly can, you know. I mean, have it be, you know, and especially musky fishing is one of those, like a lot of trout fishing is kind of solitary, you know, you end up going by yourself and you kind of, and that's, I think that's cool too. But a lot of musky fishing, let's face it, is, you know, you got a boat and you're kind of working, you know, you got several people who are all kind of working together for a common goal, and somehow trying to keep smiling and laughing the whole time through it is so absolutely important, you know. And I mean, it's funny, I'm looking at all these comments that are coming in here from sort of people I know on the down on the right side, and they're making me laugh because, you know, that's sort of the constant boat banter that I think gets you through a long day. I mean, you know, and I just kind of find, you know, if you let yourself just get too serious and start obsessing on how much you want to put a fish in the boat, I don't think that's necessarily the right approach to take. I think some level of sort of enjoying the process is really important if you're going to be a musky angler, because there's going to be a lot of process. It's the way it's going to be.
Yeah. And there's no like, oh, if you're a, you know, PMTT tournament musky angler, right, you're going to be more serious than the average guy. But like, clearly I'm with you, because like, that's like, this is, it's, you got to have fun. You got to joke. You're going to get your teeth kicked in a little bit. You might as well have fun and do it with a good group of people.
Yeah.
And musky by myself, it's not that much fun. Even when you catch them, you're just like,
well, and you know, I mean, nobody wants to hear the story about the day that you caught a big fish. Everyone wants to hear the story about the day that you like borderline sank your boat and had some kind of, you know what I mean, got stuck in the sand and had to get dug out. And I mean, like, those are the kind of stories that I think lead to being better. In musky angling, you end up with a lot of those kind of just stories about how things kind of went, you know, ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, that's Brian, that they're man overboard stories. Those are always good, you know. Yeah, and so, I mean, I take guiding, and people who know me would know that. I mean, take it like really. I mean, lay awake at night at 4 o'clock in the morning and try to really think about where are we going to fish and what are we going to do and what, you know, what. I mean, I take it really, really seriously on one level, but on another level, I think, you know, you also have to there has to be some joy in the whole thing. And, you know, and goofy stuff like, drinking horrible tasting liqueur when you get a fish is sort of one of those things that gets you through the process.
I like it. I think Rosnak's got a good like discount program for you. You just, if you want like 10% off with Wisner, you just got to bring a couple handles of Malort along, and you can get a rebate, a mail-in rebate for Eau Claire Anglers.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that, Steve, and that's what I loved about getting to know you, you know, and the crew that you guys have up there. Is I think you guys are like the essence of that. But you're also all phenomenally good anglers who catch fish and know what the hell's going on. But nobody's probably having a better time than you guys just hanging out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably true, and I think that's kind of baked into it. Is, you know, take it seriously, but don't take it seriously, and that's. You know, and obviously when I'm fishing with my friends, that's, you know, it's kind of a different vibe than when I'm guiding, but I try to make the day in the boat. And people need to have a smile on their face as they're going through. And it's really nice now. I mean, I guide a large percentage of the people I guide now are return clients, and that's just really fun. You know, like, I mean, a couple of guys I guide every year are just sending me pictures that they're down in Bolivia catching golden dorado right now, you know, and it's super fun to see the big smiles on their face. And so I'm looking forward to hearing like those stories and that kind of stuff. But
I love it.
Yeah.
I got one more kind of open-ended, and then we're going to just hit you with some rapid fire. But like, I liked how you were kind of talking about the prep. So it's like, you know, the alarm goes off at 4 or 5 a.m. the day before a guide trip. Like, what are you you ready to go? Are you calling audibles at the line of scrimmage? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, the hardest part so here's the deal. So at least for where we are here in Eau Claire, I mean, we can talk about guiding and what it is. The difference, I think, between guides who put fish in the boat regularly or people who put fish in the boat regularly and people who don't is quite simply really knowing it really, the game is mostly won when you decide what stretch of river that you're going to fish. And that is like the hardest part, right? I mean, because, and you are aware, different than out west where river levels mostly stay kind of the same, you know, tailwater fisheries, whatever. I mean, here our water levels go up and down like crazy. Our wind, you know, you got to take wind into account, especially if you think you might have anglers who are maybe a little less skilled with the rod than they could be, you know, you just don't want people to have a miserable day. But I mean, a lot of those kind of decisions are the big decisions, you know, and that's the stuff that keeps me awake at night. The rest of it, I mean, I've got a trip tomorrow. My boat's already loaded. My lunches are made. I mean, everything's all ready to go. So I just wake up in the morning and have a cup of coffee. And, you know, I kind of have a little checklist just to make sure that I don't forget anything. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to get out there and forget your landing net or something like that.
Yeah,
you know?
No, I like that though. Like we can like, as musky anglers, when you get beat down, you can think of all the million. Are they going to be in the weeds or the rocks or the rapids or the blah or the blah or the flow or the sunlight? It's like there's a couple big decisions, as you said. Get rid of it.
Yeah, and again, I think maybe rivers are easier that way than lakes. You know, let's face it. I mean, rivers we're going to hit really likely holding water. You know, well, the changes I talked about earlier, I mean, that's going to kind of drive some of that. But mostly, you know, you kind of are just going to pick your way down river. And especially if you do it like I do in a drift boat, you know, I think it changes a little bit if you're going to run around in a jet or something like that, because
you can go back.
You know, you're skipping maybe certain spots and really deciding to concentrate on certain places. I mean, a trip with me is a river trip. It's kind of a day. I mean, that's part of what the day is. It's a trip down a river, and we work our way down through it. But really, deciding what river to fish in what stretch of that river. I mean, because we have stretches that have a whole, like, really, you know, high numbers of, you know, medium-sized muskies, you know, and so, you know, do we fish that, or do we go? I mean, you know,
for the big ones, yeah.
Do we want to go fish a stretch of water where we really have legit shots? I mean, higher percentage legit shots at, you know, 50-inch fish.
Right.
You know, those kind of things. But man, that's what keeps me awake at night. And there's nothing worse than when we just get 6 inches of rain and everything blows up, and now you're trying to figure out how you're gonna, like, if you can salvage it. And
although, like, right now where we're at, kind of in the southern zone, I would take that. That would probably make
I mean, we actually got a really nice recharge earlier. Like, we did get 6 inches earlier, and so, like, it's really nice. Like, for tomorrow, I mean, I'm smalley fishing, but I have a whole bunch of options, so it's really nice.
And I know you're like humble about your lake fishing, but like, I just hearing you talk about it, like, I fish a lot of lakes. It's the same, right? It's lake. We're looking at water temp. We're looking at water clarity. We're looking at, wind is much probably bigger factor on lake, and then we have to deal with turnover. But it's the same. Pick the right spot, figure that out, and I think success is going to go up. We got a big comment. I'll let you read that while I kind of look at my notes here, Stevie. But
the one from Jeff, he's being really very kind, and it's wonderful to hear. So thank you, Jeff.
Jeff, it's if you repaste that to all panelists and attendees, we can all see it. But obviously Jeff has fished with Steve, and you guys have fished quite a bit, I would reckon, together.
Yeah, we fish probably once a year, and maybe this year I think we're going to end up fishing twice. But usually he and his friend Brian and those guys are really great anglers, and we've definitely hooked up with some really nice fish, and this year we had a day of fish that just did not want to stay. They did not want to stay hooked up. That was one of those days. So we're gonna go after them here in October. We'll take our revenge.
Nice. Well, if I'll just echo it because I don't know if anybody can read it, but like, basically, book a trip with Steve. It's kind of my shameless plug of the evening. He obviously knows what he's talking about. He's obviously going to be a good time. I know you're a humble dude, so you probably think this part's uncomfortable, but like, just check him out. He doesn't have a lot of weekends free probably this October and September, so you might want to get on it.
Yeah, it's going to need to be September and sort of I quit booking trips around the middle of November just purely because
sketchy
weather is just it's just not fair to people to have to call up and say, hey, I mean, it's a block of ice out there. And also we just start running out of daylight. I mean, it starts being really hard to get I mean, it's terrible because you could make a case for the fact that, November is mid-November. I mean, if you get the right day in November, can be the most amazing.
But that's when, that's not a bad thing though. That's when you get somebody to row you around and put you on.
I mean, we had a day, a few years ago in November that I probably will never have a day like it again in my life. And so it, for numbers of big fish. And so, it was fun to kind of actually be able to just get to fish and kind of get to do a little bit of that myself.
We don't have a ton of time, but I don't know if you heard Jen in the background. She was like, wait, tell us more about that day. She's like, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, no, we just had a day where, I mean, the best way to put it, and I almost want to, it's like it was funny. We had a film crew who was supposed to come and fish with us, and I think it was Cody Kennard and Max Meyer and Russell Peterson, and I'm trying to think who else was with us. And Joe Raplauskas, and I mean, it was just sort of a bunch of the Eau Claire crew, and we had this film crew who wanted to fish with us, and the day before was a Saturday, Sunday, and the Saturday was so brutally cold that we literally just floated down the river, went to an island, built a bonfire, and stood around and ate bratwurst and told stories, because it was just it was pointless. I mean, it was below zero. I mean, that kind of cold. But the next day you could look at the weather, and I just kept saying, it's like, tomorrow's going to be good. Tomorrow's going to be good, and these guys, so the film crew didn't come, and everybody was all
they were like, we're done with your crap. That was stupid.
They didn't want to fish in the cold. They didn't want to come on because it was going to be so cold. So we ended up floating, then we ended up floating a different stretch of river, and we ended up getting 48, a 45, and another 48, and like lost a couple other fish. So, I mean, it was one of those days where
Banner.
and but you know, the best part was at the end, it's funny, everybody's like, oh, it's too bad that film crew was there. And I said, thank God that film crew wasn't there. Like, thank goodness. Like, I don't want anyone to see that. I mean, I don't even like really tell, it's like you tell the story and it sort of sounds, again, no one wants to hear your stories about your big fish, but it's it's one of those days where it was amazing for big fish. There's a great photo of Cody, if you've never seen it, where he's got his tongue out and he's holding this fish and he's going like this. And someone told me it was, I don't really know my way around Reddit, but apparently the Reddit fly fishing thing, that was that photo was, at the top of the pile for a long time. It should have been. It was a great photograph. But the point was, those kind of days are magic when they show up. And, I mean, that's what I'd say to anyone sort of who's somewhat new to musky fly angling and is struggling. Like, the best thing I can say to people is, you got to understand that the fish don't get distributed equally. Like, you stay with it, and then all of a sudden you have a day where you just, you can't even believe anyone would ever tell you it was hard.
Yep.
You'll have days where it's just like,
well, you could go a whole season and be like, are there even fish in this lake or river? And then you have days where like, there are that many fish.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. I've had days where we've moved.
They're not often, but
every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Had a fish follow or boil or move, and then having fished that same stretch, 5 days earlier and, struggled to move one or two fish. So, I mean, that's the part of this, I guess I'd say to people.
Like, set expectations, Stephen. You're an accomplished guy who's been doing this for longer than a lot of us have been alive. But like, those days for you, like, they're not, for the people that are getting into it, like, they're few and far between. They're kind of days you hang your cap on, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're not like every other week, I'm just
no, those big kind of days. But the other thing with those days is this. And I used to be a big waterfowler, and we used to always say this about waterfowl hunting, you got to go. Like, the idea of sitting around waiting for some perfect weather front or something, and people are like, oh, I'm going to wait for, like, no, you just got to go. Like,
that's how you.
Yes, on most of those days when you have really, really great days in musky angling where you put a bunch of fish in the boat and have a great day, that usually you could kind of get up in the morning and feel the weather and walk out and kind of be like, oh, this is good, but man, you gotta go. Like, you can't, like, and especially like, you can't be like, oh, the moon phase is wrong, or it's like, I've had terrible days on what were, full moon days. And I've had, I've literally had guys, I'd get 2 guys last year that put 11 fish in the boat, and it was not during a favorable
right
phase. We just, we just got that the weather was right, and that's it. So you gotta go fish.
TJ's got it right. Can't catch him from the couch. Can't catch him from the couch. All right, but I told you I run a tight program, Steve. Right? I try to. We got like
what do you got for
a generous 7 minutes left?
Yeah, let's do it.
I want to end. So we talked about a lot of good stuff. I want to kind of end just, I guess, kind of what's your program, and more so on gear. So hit me with like, and a lot of people know this, but hit me with like, boat, rod, line, flies. Just kind of work me. What are you running? What's with that, I run a drift boat. I mean, my drift boat's a high country boat. They make them out of North Carolina. They're really great boats. A real open floor plan skiff. So I really like fishing out of it. It's nice. But I mean, I'm just a guy on the oars. I mean, I don't have any other like sort of technology in my boat. I mean, that's where someone like, you're going to have Luke Swanson on later, and that's going to be really fascinating, stuff, because he's running a whole different world of all kinds of cool electronics, and it's just not a thing that I do. And part of it, I think, we talked about this before, where, I mean, I just have this mantra of, for me, simpler is better. Everything should be simpler. You're going to catch more fish, I think, and you're going to
you know, your frustration level and everything's going to go down when you go simpler. So, I mean, if you're looking at my rods, I run, fish pretty much nothing but Chippewa River, you know, one piece rods.
Never.
You know, I'll tell you yeah. You know, I mean, and I know there are other really good rods on the market.
Yeah, they're good.
But I love those rods, you know. And
if you gotta fish them, man, you live on the freaking chip. You gotta fish them.
Yeah, and you know, and just the stuff like, I mean, you know, on the rare time, and my rods get really fished hard. I mean, they get used and abused, and so, you know, every now and again I'll just need some kind of maintenance-y kind of thing done to my rods. I'll drop them off with Tom. And 2 days later, they're sitting on my thing. I mean, and seriously, that ain't happening with any major rod manufacturer. I mean, when people worry about, what about the warranty? It's like, good Lord, that's
how you and I first met. And you know what's funny about that? I have the snake guides from your rod because I used, when Tom cut them off, I was like, Tom, let me see those. Let me take them. I'm going to use those to talk to people and send them pictures when they're like, what do you mean snake guides wear out? I'm like, look at these. They're sawed. Yeah.
It's sawed through. I have other brands of rods, and you will eat through your snake guides and your tip top in no time at all if you're fishing tungsten coated lines. So that's a no-brainer.
Cool.
So,
what about
lines? And lines, I mostly just fish. I mean, you can jump from brand to brand, and you know, but when it comes to musky lines, I've had really good luck with Cortland. Just for longevity, they hold up really, really well, and the new Pike musky line handles great. So I really like that line a lot. I use different brands. I use Rio lines for other things. You know, I mean, but for the musky line, that Cortland line's really well. And then for leaders, I mean, this is the thing. If I want
one question for you, Steve. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I do have a question on Cortland line directed at you. So it's talking about basically, and I do this a little bit, but interested in your perspective, using kind of the tropical lines in the summertime.
You know, it's interesting because I totally do for smallmouth.
Sure.
So I use saltwater
floating lines,
tropical lines for smallmouth bass, you know, because they just handle better. I mean, they don't get real soft, you know, the same way. And, you know,
for the same reason freshwater lines perform better in cold temps, those saltwater lines.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's just, it isn't necessarily that they're saltwater, they're just tropical. And so they sort of handle better. And they, you know, I mean, look at the 90-degree air temperature, 80-degree water temperature, that's tropical, you know, so they work well.
Yep.
And but I've never used them for summertime musky fishing. You know, I mean, and some of that's just, you know, I end up with guiding on most of my hot summertime guiding is probably more directed at smallies than muskies. So, yeah.
I find, just to plug it, I do find like it's tough because like I'm literally talking about a line that I maybe use 4 days out of the year because it's like it's got to be hot enough but also cool enough to fish for muskie. They're great to cast.
Yeah. I'm sure they're a dream.
Yeah, they should.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're great.
But it's kind of like a niche within a niche of fly.
I don't see why the same thing that makes great tropical lines work great for smallmouth wouldn't work the same way for muskies. I mean, it would be the same situation, I would imagine.
Yep.
And then, you know, and then it's funny just because I know from the Facebook muskie page and stuff, the amount of ink that gets spilled on there over leaders, you know, and it's like, this is where I am the king of the simple. I mean, I don't think anyone runs a simpler leader than me. And it's really simple. It's 3 feet of Maxima, 40-pound Maxima with a double surgeon's knot I use like 26-pound AFW, the American fishing wire, but Rio bite wire would work it works just the same way. And then, yes, I use a snap.
Guilty.
And here's the rule with this stuff. And when I think, so this is so simple. Anyone can tie this leader. And so I can literally make one of these leaders in like 2 minutes. So there's no excuse not to put a new one on every single day. Like, so when my clients come, they get a brand new leader with a brand new snap, with a brand new everything. So when people talk about snaps failing, yeah, maybe after they've been open and closed and not shut right and bent and had all kinds of stuff happen to them, maybe they don't work right. But if you put a brand new snap on every day, I've never had one fail. And that's a simple deal.
Well, and as long as it's, just to clarify, and correct me if you have a different perspective, but like size 3 and above.
Yeah, size 3. That's what I use. So size 3, you can either use. I've kind of come to like those. What the heck is the brand? It's a crankbait snap. I'm trying to remember the.
Staylock.
Staylocks are great. I was just thinking of a different one. I just don't have the package here. I just buy them at like, a regular bait shop. But they're just a crankbait.
Well, they're all the same. They're all the same.
Yeah, they're all kind of the same. They're kind of hard to get open and closed. So when you know that they're closed if you do them right.
Yeah.
But honestly, man, to me, that's like the amount of time people spend worrying about this. Knock on wood, I have never had a leader fail.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, it's like, unless unless it was my own fishing when I was being lazy and didn't change stuff out and like had something that, tried to go multiple fish on a leader that had been beat up, something like that. But if you're just like,
you got to watch, honestly, I don't know how long people are using their Staylocks for or whatever, because like if I use a leader too long, it fails at the perfection loop on the mono end, or it fails at the perfection loop on the wire end, or maybe and that's like if I use it for like a long time.
You're exactly right. The number one place where where you do end up having any problem is actually the perfection loop at the line end. It's like, that is a weird one. And when people talk about knots, there is look it up. There's almost no more bomb-proof knot than a double surgeon's knot, and it's the easiest knot to do. You can tie it with cold fingers. Anyone can tie that knot. You're not going to mess it up. And so it's like, in my mind, I just don't understand, like, why make something really simple hard? This is the simplest thing in the world. Anyway, that's here. And then, and then flies. Yeah. I honestly I fish 90% of the time some kind of a variation on Bufords, and I'm kind of picky about my heads. I tend to like them a little bit smaller. Like, I don't like a really big bomber head, because I think then the flies start going up and down, and then you start almost wanting to put lead eyes in them in order to just balance that out a little bit. And it's just easier not to put. A better way to put it is not as densely packed of a head. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Like, so you still need the thing to make the fly kick, but it doesn't need to be a big, densely packed head. I mean, you're not tying a deer hair frog or something, where you're packing. And I don't know. I mean, really simple flies. I just saw, I don't know. Do you guys carry Dom's flies?
Oh yeah.
So I just saw, he put a fly up today.
Yeah, that's coming up.
Simple. I was like, man, that is exactly the staple fly for what I do. Just change the colors. But that fly that he put up online, I'm sure you can talk people through it.
Yeah, he uses
such a great simple fly, fishes wonderfully, and it again, simple's better than.
Yep. And it's funny to hear you talk about it, because he doesn't use deer hair for his Buford heads. He uses somebody remind me what it's called. It's the stuff that Lunds makes, the Misfit Fly stuff. You can look it up. I can't remember, but go look at their fly shop. They have it. But it's a synthetic wampa hair. Thank you. He uses that stuff, and it's like, yep. Thank you all. Appreciate it. So anyway. Yes, great. What just quickly, I know we're burning, so I'm gonna go really fast.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on color for musky flies?
I mean, my first thought is that it probably doesn't matter as much as people think. And that's the simplest way to put it. My second thought is that I fish really, if I'm just like brought out, so I have this like staple of flies here that have just caught a bunch of fish. And, like, these are flies that last season put multiple fish in the boat.
He's going to show the picture if you guys hang out. Yeah, no.
And so it's like pink and black. I mean, those are my, like, you know, if you really want to know, pink and black for me are the two colors that I use the most, without a doubt. Having said that, like, we were just getting fish on these real natural colors this weekend, but a lot of that's, man, if a fish is looking up against the sky, go underwater, look up. I mean, see how, you know, you really are going to notice that most of your flies are just kind of black no matter what.
Especially in that water up there. I'm not trying to rush you, but like I said, I want to make sure I'm respectful of your time and others. So I got 3 questions left.
Yeah, let's do them.
One word answers.
Got it.
We're going to go rapid fire. So eyes on a musky fly, yes or no? Does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter. That's 3 words.
Mornings or evenings? Best.
Either.
Did you say either or neither?
Either.
Yep,
I mean,
I like it. Yep.
All day.
These are from the.
Yeah, you don't know, man. I mean, it comes all day.
Yep. These are crowdsourced. These are not mine. These are crowdsourced. All right. You're on a small, fast river. You move a fish. Do you figure 8? Or sorry, you don't move a fish. All right. Hold on. Back up. I fucked that one up. You're on a small, fast river. Do you want to figure 8 every cast or recast right away?
Can I go more than one word answer to this?
Or go for it.
I think you have to, because so it's really simple. If you can see the bottom, and you got eyes and you're wearing polarized sunglasses, and especially if the bottom is some distance from your boat, so that if a fish actually followed, they would have to come up where you. Man, so we got to remember, especially if it's a fast river and the boat's moving. So now you got to do a cost benefit analysis. Like, if I spend time figure 8 and I'm going to miss a shot at another spot, and in fast water, not wintering holes, that kind of stuff, but stuff like we're doing right now, like this kind of time.
Where they eat it or they don't.
Fish are going to eat on the current line more often than not. They don't want to leave their living room and get out in there. So they're going to blast it on the current line. If you can't see the bottom, or if you have, man, so a lot of this is just gut, man. Like, I got a gut feeling about something, you know, go ahead and figure 8.
Yep.
It's not a bad idea to always, just before you pick up the cast, no matter what, just do a L.
Yep.
Kind of swing an L up and go. I think
the key to that answer is small, fast rivers, right? If you ask me about fishing the lakes that we live on, like, I can't even see 6 inches. You can figure 8, 9 times, and
And if you're fishing a wintering, if we're fishing low and slow on a wintering hole where I can hold, and again, like, if you're gonna get multiple shots into the spot, figure 8. Like, why wouldn't you? You got nothing, doesn't cost anything, and you should go ahead and pick it up and go. But if you're gonna only get 1 shot, and there's a really awesome eddy line coming, and you can see it. And if you sit and grind around in 8 inches of water with a figure 8, you're going to miss. That's just not being smart. Like, you have to, be smart about it. And that's the stuff where when I'm guiding, it's like, I have to really talk to people, because it's like, I'm not going to be able to necessarily, like, keep a running commentary on every single time everybody needs to figure 8. So we kind of develop a game plan about that.
Yeah. I'm glad you used your kind of exception to the one-word answer on that one. That was a good one.
Yeah.
That was good. Well, Steve, this was awesome, dude. I'm so grateful you joined us. I had a lot of fun.
This was a ball.
I hope everybody liked it. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Check out Eau Claire Anglers, Steve Wisner. He's the man. I appreciate you coming on, dude.
Well, no, and again, I will just pump for your upcoming thing. Like, what an absolute honor it is to be included amongst the bunch of names that you've got coming up for the rest of this
lead off hitter, big guy. Lead off hitter.
Yeah, but a whole bunch of just, the amount of musky knowledge that you've got put together is coming in is pretty amazing. So anyway, I'm looking forward to tuning in next week it's Nick next week, right?
Nick next week, yeah. That's a good plug. Reminder we got Nick and then Pogo up next. So sign up, everybody. All right, Steve. You go, brother.
Hey, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Good luck on the water tomorrow. We'll see ya.